The scene was dead anyway. A music scene lives, a music scene dies. The stories, however, are immortal. The scene was dead anyway is a look into the lives, communities and music scenes that helped shape an entire generation. Hello and welcome to The Scene Was Dead Anyway podcast. I'm your host Rick Walland. This is episode number 22. On the podcast today with me is Dan Brookes, lead vocalist and frontman for arguably the UK's best modern day post-punk band, Total Victory. They cite influences such as The Fall, Sleaford Mods and Dischord Records American post-hardcore punk band, Hoover. Formed around 14 years ago, they have released 3 studio albums: The Pyramid of Privilege, National Service and English Martyrs. Before we start, if you're watching on YouTube, please could you like and subscribe to my channel to help the podcast grow. If you're listening on Apple iTunes, please could you leave a review under the ratings and review section. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter by searching The Scene Was Dead Anyway. So, welcome on the show, Dan Brookes of Total Victory. How are you? And also, would you like to just give us an introduction, like who is Dan Brookes and where does Dan Brookes live?
Dan Brookes currently lives in Liverpool, in Toxteth L8. I'm from Wigan. How revealing are we being about our actual relationship, Rick? Like, do you have to be ethical here?
Go for it, mate. I'm.
So you know. I mean, I know Rick from back in the day. In case you're listening and you don't know how this came about. Rick and I were in the scene in Wigan back in the day, the one that is dead anyway.
Yeah. Nicely done.
I've lived all over Britain, lived briefly in Turkey, I've lived briefly in America. But I've mainly lived in the Northwest. And currently, I am the singer in Total Victory, which I guess is the reason we're talking. I can see our EP in the background. I'm Corinthian's old single as well.
It's slightly blurred because it's focused on my face, but yeah, we've got an LP, Total Victory, and also a very old split with Cowtown. And your old band. You was in another band as well, weren't you, before Total Victory?
Yeah, I was in a band called my first band was called the John Birch Society, named after the famous anti-communist league of the 50s, which I thought was kind of an interesting name, but no one really understood it, and including the other member of the band, but whatever. That was like 2-piece post-rock. Like, we had a drum machine, and that also had like a bass function on it, which was really cool. So it was our bassist and our drummer, and every time we tried to audition a bassist, it would go really badly. Like, we had this one bassist who auditioned in my bedroom at home, and I used to I had this really nice Yamaha 80s solid state amp that had like no reverb. It was like a really great dead sound when you would like smack your guitar. And she like stood up on the bed to see if her boyfriend had come to pick her up. And when she got off, like, it tilted the amp over and just smashed on the floor. So she not only failed the audition, she broke a piece of equipment that was quite dear to me. But we didn't last very long. Within 5 shows, we changed our sound about 4 times. We were quite insecure. But I'm still friends with Liam, who was the other guitarist, and he's a really great guy. Like, he's been lifelong friends with him. And then I formed Corinthians not long after that.
Yeah, so let's go back a little bit to where you also, as you say, from Wigan, and we probably met. When I actually remember this now was the first band that I was in with my brother Tom, and I replaced the drummer in a band called AWOL, U Palestine. And I think you came down to see us one time in at the old Maxime's, which is no longer.
And Maxime's, when you were supporting, was it In Pain Die?
Yeah, that's a great memory.
Yeah, I remember because I was there in a journalistic capacity, and I reviewed In Pain Die quite negatively. Back then, I really didn't like metal, and I really didn't understand metal, and there was a bit of a tribal thing in Wigan going on between, well, three distinct tribes, really. You had kind of like us, who were like the sort of the art rock lot. Then there was the kind of the lads, the sort of the post-Oasis, pre-Kasabian lads, and then there was metal. And all the kind of like, and I'm using this totally advisedly, uncool forms of rock, like metal and punk, and they all seem to kind of come together. But like, I had a bit of a tribal dislike of In Pain Die. But yeah, I remember coming to see, AWOL. It was you, Tom, and who was the other person?
It was called Podder.
Podder,
Podder. Who
I
actually
really liked AWOL. What was that song where your brother had that really cool like scream? It was like one of the coolest screams I've ever heard on a song.
I can't remember the name of it, but I know which song you mean.
It was so good. I thought, because you were so young as well. I mean, like it was really impressive. And then I remember you, obviously in Samuel Sharp, but also I think my kind of best musical memory of you, Rick, is probably drumming with Scott. Yeah,
riding shotgun.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you a few questions because I sort of see this as
it's nice. It's nice to
So, for people who are listening in and you don't know anything about Rick's background, Rick played with this guy called Scott in a group called Riding Shotgun. Scott was a really interesting talent. I think you would agree with me there.
That's the safest word to use.
To describe like a unique talent, like someone who had a singular vision. This is the story I always remember about Scott. Scott was recording his first or second record. This is before he had a drummer in the band, and he was recording it with Rob Fairhurst up at Greenslade Farm. And Rob tried to get him to record to a click. And he just played it, and he just, like, as you'd expect, if you don't know him, completely wandered away from the click, like absolutely no sense of metronomic time.
Yeah.
And then Rob was like pulling his hair out. He's like, Scott, I think you need to do that again. And Scott was like, no, it's perfect. And then like he went and double tracked his guitar entirely perfectly with what he just played.
Yeah.
So this is like someone who was completely operating in their own space. And I guess what I always wondered about that was like, how did you deal with that? Because you are, I would put you more as a conventional musician in that like tightness and discipline.
Well, at the time I was very new really to playing music and playing drums, and I was about 17 years old. So for context, I'm 33 now. So, this was the first couple of years of me playing, and I was just happy to be in bands, and just playing. And but on hindsight, I really didn't like the music at all. I think it's, sorry to say, but terrible in my opinion. But that was a shame
to hear that, because I thought there were some good moments. Like I don't think like the whole thing worked, and like I could tell it was like I felt a bit for you, but was it Lee, the bass player?
Lee, yeah.
Because like I spoke to him a few times, and he seems like a pretty normal guy, like pretty like that. It wasn't his thing, but like you were both just so psyched to be in bands.
Yeah, that was it.
It was just like, let's just do this. Like, I thought that was.
Scott had a really good energy about him as well. He was like, very like, let's do it. This is something really special, and I'm, so that kind of, I like that about him, and we did play some shows further afield, like Nottingham and stuff like that. So for me at the time, that was all very new to me, and it was all exciting. So, yeah.
But you on the famous Easy T tour with him?
No.
So like. Apparently, he went on a tour supporting the US artist Easy T and possibly Cass McCombs, who's pretty well known nowadays.
Yeah.
And it was Chris Hooson booked it, and he put because he always used to put his mates on with internationally established touring acts. Basically, every night was just like Scott clearing out the building before these like touring acts went on, which
I
don't know, like. yeah, I miss that. Like, I miss that kind of like willful provocation. I miss that slightly hateful, slightly nihilistic aspect. But I mean, I guess if you didn't, I guess yeah, you were in the band, so it's a different prospect.
I think the thing with him as well, he was fully committed, and he did everything with full conviction. So in a way, I respect him for that. He didn't really give a shit like if people didn't like him and stuff, and
Oh, that was quite apparent. Yeah. Anyway, so anyway, where were we? So because yeah, I have sidetracked you with my own question.
It's all good. It's all good. I mean, he did come up on a couple of episodes in the past, so he was a big presence actually on at that time on the Wigan music sort of scene. So, which is kind of why I do this podcast, is to kind of document the time of different scenes and stuff. So, but yeah, I guess Total Victory is the main reason we're here. And you've been together for how long now?
I think 14. Yeah, about 14 years next month. We formed in June or July 2007, so not long after Corinthians had split up, and it was at a festival in Bolton, at Queen's Park in Bolton. And I'd sort of got a couple of people on side, and then we asked the person who is now our guitarist, but he became our drummer at the time, if he just fancied it. And it was, I guess he was a bit like you in that, like, it wasn't really his kind of thing, but we needed a drummer. Again, this is something I quite like, where you kind of just have to make do sometimes in local music, where like there'd always be someone in the band who was like, not really sure this is for me, but get somewhere and they're like, oh, maybe I like this now.
So what's your current lineup? Because I know it's changed a few times. Am I right?
So yeah, it has changed. So it's definitely in the band is me. I sing and play guitar on record, but I just sing live. Matt Leonard plays bass. Then James, who came in on drums, is sort of playing guitar. He's playing guitar live. Andy has taken over. Andy Dawson, who plays in like a lot of punk bands, plays drums. Martin Mansell's on guitar. But then we've also like had people come and do stuff in the studio with us, like a girl called Emily Cook, who does some solo stuff in Bolton. Steve Hutchinson has been our driver on tour, but then he just plays guitar with us like most nights. And Tom, who was in Corinthians, he depped on a tour for us, and he was really great. And like I'd hope to, like for me, the band is kind of like me and the two Matts at the moment. We're kind of doing all the songs, and then we just get anyone in. Because like as we've grown up, the idea of like your band's like this gang, or your band is this set of people, it's kind of fallen apart a bit. We've all got lives now. We're all like touching 40, which is kind of sad to think of. In fact, some of us are over 40 in the group. So it's a case of who's available. Can you commit to this tour, this recording, these practices? And if you can, let's do it. Yes.
So kind of a collective, but with some core members, yourself and...
Yeah, I would say that. And this is the thing, if everyone was available for a tour, like we'd probably all go and we'd find something for everyone to do. Like I've double drums, I've like 3 guitars, but whatever, like, or take like a permanent sound man rather than dealing with some of the... to be honest, like most of the sound on tours has been pretty good actually. I know that's an old complaint that people have, but like we mainly tour in France where it's like really professional. People really like our kind of music. Whereas like I remember being in Corinthians and playing, I remember we played the Retro Bar and the soundman walked off because he didn't want to do it.
What?
He just left. Like he just left the bar. Like he just went upstairs between, like we were on second out of 3. And he just went upstairs. Like, he just didn't want to do it. So we did it ourselves. Like, we were kind of, like, running the guitars over, like, I mean, we sounded like dog shit because we did the sound ourselves, but... Yeah, but, like... Oh, go on.
I was going to say, you mentioned France. There's a question that I had about that, like, where is it? Would you say you've developed more of a presence on the continent, like in particular France, than the UK.
I mean, statistically, if you want to look at like our Spotify or where our records get posted to when they get ordered, it's 98% France. We've played more gigs in France than Britain. Like I find that quite astounding now. We've done 7 full-length tours in France.
Wow.
We've played, I don't know, 30 shows in Britain. We've played 1 in Germany and 1 in Belgium, but I count that as part of the same thing. And I can't even account for it, Rick. I don't even know why it is, but like they, and pretty much they alone, have been into us. We've been offered some shows a little bit further afield. Like some guy tried to get us to go to Portugal, but he didn't want to pay us. And, you know, like a couple of other places. Like there was some talk about America, but visa and all that kind of stuff, like, held us back.
Yeah.
But yeah, like France has been good to us, but I think what we're finding now is that it was very much a part and parcel of pre-Brexit Britain. So it was easy to do. Like you could just go, you could just get on a boat, like literally just get on a boat and go, and it was like playing down the road, except just a bit further away. Now I don't know if we can do it. I literally have no idea if we'll ever be able to do it again. It'd been interesting to find out.
Yeah, it's all changed. We'll see. Who would you consider to be your main? So, because some people who are listening or who will be watching this might not know, like your music. Who would you consider to be your main influences?
That's a good question. So, I mean, I can tell you who we get compared to. I think that's a good way of putting it. So, like in the beginning of the band, people like used to compare us to like other post-punk groups. Like I don't know. I guess people used to compare us a bit to Sleaford Mods because there's a kind of a dialect aspect to it. Like I sing in my own dialect.
Yeah.
People compared us to The Fall, which I don't think is really a fair comparison, even though like our voices are not massively dissimilar. Because I thought our earlier stuff sounded a bit more American. Like it clearly wore like more Dischord influences. I think we sounded a bit more like Hoover, and then as it's gone on, I think we sound a bit more like. I mean, I really like Women, the Canadian group Women. I really like, like Liars. You know, I like kind of that starker, like slightly more creepy post-punk. Like the main thing is when we're in France, people always want to like ask us what we think about Fontaine's DC, what we think about Idols, what we think about Shame, what we think about Black Midi. I mean, I know we don't sound like Black Midi, to be fair, especially their new record, which is like an interesting piece of work.
Yeah.
But we get kind of mixed in with what you might call contemporary white British post-punk revival bands. Like some people want to talk to us about like Fat White Family. I think we have a slightly different take on it, which is a bit more pastoral, a bit more. I don't know. I don't really know I can't really talk about my own work in this respect. I think what really changed our work, Rick, is like since 2015 until about 2020, I was living in Worcester. Have you ever been to Worcester?
Samuel Sharp played a few gigs there. Yeah, it was actually
We're
the
at
best.
Mars Bar.
We played one there, but we played a house gig, and our shows in Worcester were the best shows we played as Samuel Sharp. We had this weird like cult following there, and it was like everybody was moshing and dancing, and it was like,
wow, okay.
It was awesome, yeah.
Was it with the promoter Special Attacks?
No, it was just for a band that we knew. This crazy two piece called Toxic Pigeon. It was on the low key sort of thing. So
that's really interesting. I didn't know that, Rick, because there wasn't a lot of activity when I was there. I saw maybe 3 or 4 gigs. I missed Hey Colossus when they came through town, which was really stupid because it's a tiny town and not a lot going on. The reason I mention it though is because like Worcester is kind of middle England. It's kind of like when foreigners think of England and the green and pleasant land, what they're kind of thinking of is like the version of England that is Worcester, like countryside, quiet, rural, and living there and kind of being amongst that kind of changed my whole perspective on life. like in a what it's like to live in in a conservative place, to live in this sort of abundance, to live in this place where like the problems are much more hidden. And it changed the music a bit, I think. Like the music became a lot less like and a bit more downbeat, I think. I don't know why it changed it though. Maybe I got old as well.
Yeah, I guess you mellowed out a bit. I don't know,
I don't know if I've mellowed out. Like I think on certain things, I'm much more switched on, angry, focused. In fact, I'd say my anger is a bit more focused. Like, for instance, this is going to sound really weird actually, but I was listening the single you've got behind you, the Corinthians one. I was listening to that quite recently, and like I don't like the lyrics on it at all anymore.
There we go.
Yeah, admittedly, and no disrespect to Cowtown, who I really like. I think Our Side is much better than theirs because they just did two little instrumentals. And they're very nice, and like Cowtown are really fun live. But I think they probably threw away two songs that they didn't care about, whereas we put our best two songs on. But like I don't really like the lyrics, and like I could tell I was a bit of a sneery, annoying twat around that time. And I just think I've matured, and the anger comes out a bit more eloquently. Like I was quite angry then, but like at nothing in particular. Like I had no reason to be, and now I feel like not necessarily I have a reason to be, but like it feels like I'm much more aware of all the bad things that go on. And I guess
something I was going to ask you, that I guess the big difference is in Total Victory, you're more of like a frontman, lead vocalist, whereas Corinthians, I think you played more of like a guitar vocals role. But I guess what I wanted to ask you was, I think that's a big part of Total Victory is your performance. Like you can basically jump in people, in people's faces and just like really get into the crowd, and that's what I love about your shows. Actually, your performances.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, I think it's super important. Like I read a quote maybe about 20 years ago, and it really changed my way of thinking about what a show should be. Because I think probably in my late teens, I thought a music show should be a faithful reproduction of the music on the record, right? And then at some point I realized that's completely boring and completely like asinine, and like I think that live music should be this kind of completely like permissive environment where anything goes, and you should almost be like a bit scared about going to it in a way. I don't jump on people anymore, because I think that's maybe a bit, I think culturally, I think things have changed, and you don't want to get that kind of reputation or whatever. But the thing that I read was that on some level, when you're at a show, psychologically, you are kind of paying to see people enact your fantasies. Like they're on stage, they're in the spotlight. Everyone dreams of some kind of attention, don't they? They dream to be like, not everybody, but a lot of people in a way wish it was them, or they transport themselves into that situation. And I always used to find it bloody painful, Rick, when I would watch a band just going through their songs like in a really boring, half-assed way. Like you're not in your practice room. And like I always used to prefer the shows that were like completely chaos, where like it didn't even sound like a song, but like you felt something, and like you felt moved. Fortunately, with Total Victory, I think we've got the best of both worlds now, in that like we've got a good band, and like I get free reign to sort of do what I need to do. And I think that has helped get people into us, especially in France, where I don't want to talk in general terms, but I think there's this like real respect for the artist as a cultural figure in France. So people say things to me in France that are like really like laudatory, and they make one big-headed if you let it get to your head, like about how much they love you and how much they like you. And like you go home, and then no one thinks any different of you, and it's like it's really difficult thing to square.
I think the point is that in this country, musicians and bands are treated like shit, and then you go somewhere, you treat it like that. That is actually what the norm should be. That's like, how it should be. But
I completely agree. Like, that's the other thing about France. We have been treated so well, like so well. Like, I mean, just like every night we've got somewhere to stay, and it's only once has it been a shithole. Only once out of about 50 shows has it been like a dump. Right? Always good food, always good people. We've had people put us up on nights where we've not even played a show.
Wow.
Like, because there's like a network of people, and they say, this band are passing through, can you put them up for the night? They need somewhere to stay. And they're just happy to have you there. Like,
that's amazing. Yeah.
I don't know if this is like a French thing or a DIY thing, because like, I occasionally used to put bands up in Manchester, and when I put on shows in Manchester, and I didn't like them being there often, even when they were nice, even when I had no problem, even when I loved the band. Like, I have this thing about I got personal space or whatever, and like in France, that just doesn't seem to be anything like a problem. So I don't know. I'm wondering if it's like a scene thing or kind of a national characteristic.
I do think there's a cultural aspect there, especially continental like Europeans. I think they have a very different mentality to us Brits. They're just a bit more chill about, just kind of welcoming people in, and there has to be, here it's a lot about invitations and friends of friends and stuff like that.
It feels like that. I don't want it to be true though, and I know that there are still a thin sliver of like a punk scene in Britain where you will be looked after, but that is like, in Britain, it seems like all the scenes are very like separated from each other, even if they still exist at all. Like, that is, I mean,
yeah,
it's debatable whether they do.
Yeah. So, you've released four albums, is that right?
3 albums.
3 albums.
EP compilation, and then the thing behind you is it's like a tour EP.
And it has this interesting. Like a note from some guy. Hi Vincent, I saw you in Burnley, 19th of June 17. Give me a call when you can. I knew Avril. I just absolutely love that. Where did you get that from then?
That's Matt's doing, and like, so that phone number's not real. He's like photoshopped it so it's a fake number. So if anyone's got any ethical issues there, it's not a real phone number. Yeah, Matt just saw it and he took a photo of it. I think he must have seen it in Ramsbottom, because that's where he lives. But he travels between, like, he works in North Manchester and he lives in Ramsbottom. So I think he would have seen it somewhere on his commute. And yeah, we just needed like a quick, simple image for the tour EP. Like, usually our album covers are a bit more considered, but I think we just all like that, and it's quite funny. And I think with the tour EP as well, I think you're sort of trying to say somehow this isn't quite as important as our other releases, so don't take it as seriously. And I quite like that cover because I think it successfully does that.
Yeah. What, in terms of the albums you have released, which one would you say you're most proud of? You enjoyed?
I think most people would say our best was our second record, National Service. And I have incredibly fond memories of that. Although I don't have terribly fond memories of writing it. And like, we recorded it in such an ad hoc way. We did it, pardon me, in like practice rooms and like bedrooms, and like, it's such a home recording, but I think it sounds so great. Like, it sounds like a good studio recording. Like, I would put that up against any record in its ballpark.
Yeah.
For some reason, though, like, I'm still quite drawn to our most recent record, English Martyrs. And I don't know why, because like, the recording is probably not quite as good, and we argued so much about that album. We nearly split up over that record. Like, it was such a difficult record to finish. Matt, who plays guitar, he left the band during the recording because he was just not getting on with us. He didn't really feel like his ideas were coming out.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure why. I shouldn't say that.
Okay.
Don't cut that. But I mean, like, yeah, like he left for some reason. He was upset musically, but I think tonally and in terms of saying something, I think that's our best record from a certain angle. I'm really proud of our first one, Pyramid of Privilege, but it's like, and it sounds really coherent for the fact that it was just a bunch of demos that we polished. Basically, we didn't do much to that. I'm like, it never really occurred to us we could have an album. We thought we were just going to be another local band. We thought we were just going to be a bunch of knobheads playing the pubs, and then like we put that on a CD. Like you used to in like the noughties, you put it on a CDR and call it your album, but it's not your album. It's like a bunch of songs you've done.
Yeah.
And then, but eventually, it's become an album, right? It's like it's cohered. So, if you put a gun to my head, I would say National Service. I think it plays from beginning to end really well. I think it's got a good balance of like melody and anger, but some humor. I think there's like some humor to it, and I like that. I like a nice, a bit of levity. So I would say National Service. If you're going to listen to one, listen to National Service. But my favourite is probably English Martyrs.
There's a song off your first one, Omni Victory. I think that's definitely in my top three, like your songs. Especially the bit where it kind of builds up and then the bass and the drums just lock in. That really meaty, like just gorgeous bass riff, and then your vocals over the top, obviously, and just hairs on the back of my neck, man. Like when I hear that song, I love it so much.
Yeah, I think that's one of our best to play live. It's so much fun to play live, and we've never dropped that from our set, and I don't think we ever will. What you can really hear in the beginning of that album, so Fiat Lux goes into Omni Victory, you can hear the difference in how we used to write songs to now, because that was like we would get together on a Wednesday night after work and we would just jam, and like we used to play Omni Victory for like 40 minutes, 50 minutes, just getting it tighter and tighter, and then when it got too tight, like start like taking it apart and making it really loose and make it really atmospheric. And what you hear in that song is probably like, it's probably not the best version we ever played of it, because we played it for hours and hours and hours on end, but you hear like a good representation of what it was. And now like all the songs are kind of like mapped out, like chords here, maybe we'll do it. Whereas on that, like, it's a lot more intuitive, and I love that way of playing. I'm a big fan of like 70s sort of German rock, where it's clearly all like improvised and then edited later. And I wish we could still do that, but like we just don't see each other enough. So someone's got to say, "All right, I'll write the songs now."
Yeah. This is a question that I forgot to put on the list, but now I've remembered it. So, the band name. Because I always wondered where that came from, and Total Victory.
I think it was a military operation for the US in Iraq. Although it's like an expression that apparently a lot of evangelical Christians use. To be honest with you, Rick, I'm not a mega fan of the name, but it sort of stuck with everyone. And like, I tried to change it before we had a first record out, but everyone was opposed to changing it. And so it's kind of stayed like that. And I suppose it does have a particular irony to it, in that we are Total Victory, the most victory one can possibly have, and we are a local band, who have no fans in our own country. I like that irony.
Yeah.
But yeah, the name, I think it was it was like a military operation. It was meant to be like critical, but like I don't think that ever really came across. Like it's just basically two words to me now. We could be called anything. I would have changed the name if I could have had my way, but I was overruled.
Interesting you say about it being a kind of evangelical Christian thing, because it kind of because I'm a Buddhist and my family are Buddhists, and we actually use that term quite a lot as well. Like Total Victory, it's like to to basically have the best life possible and to be the happiest you possibly can be. It's like total victory, you know, win over all of your problems, all of your suffering, all of your, you know, yeah.
I think I might have known that, because sometimes at low moments I will Twitter search total victory, and you will see a lot of Japanese people using the phrase, and I'm guessing that is also a Buddhist thing.
Yeah, it all comes from Japan. Like the organization we practice under, it's all Japanese based, so it could be that it's just like a translation from like a couple of characters, and so you talked a bit about the songwriting. So what is the songwriting process in Total Victory?
At the moment, I will kind of write a basic song, like I won't send it unless I've got like 3 bits, like let's not say verse, bridge, chorus, but like 3 bits, and then I'll upload it to a Google Drive, and then everyone will have a listen and see if they can think of anything or add anything. So when we get to the practice room, we're beginning with some material. We're beginning with like a thing. So, but at the minute, like my life has changed so much over the last few years, and and obviously I don't want to go into like COVID and things like that. I don't think that's that important in this story actually. But things have changed so much recently. Like it's changed the kind of music I want to make. Like I don't want to make I don't want to make National Service 2, English Martyrs 2. I want to make something different. So like what we've been doing recently is taking the songs that we've demoed and then rearranging them, like completely rearranging them, trying to like make them more interesting or make them, I don't know, just less like us if we can, which is difficult because it's like you have certain musical instincts, don't you? You have things that you want to do, and like trying to stop those is really difficult. Like I've likened it to, especially when you've got a band with 5 or 6 people, it's like trying to turn a battleship. It's like a real maneuver, and it takes like orchestration. It takes will on everyone's part to want to do that. But at the minute, it's still the same process. It's like I will get a guitar, I will just have a fiddle, a sound will come into my head, and I'll try and find it. And like we will go from there, and then I think we'll realize within sort of an hour of hacking at something if it's got any legs. It's worth doing. And then sometimes like you'll go to it in 6 months and go, what the hell was that? Like that is rubbish. Like so like time, like it's a process over time as well. And like what's important to me now is that everyone in the band has a bit, like that they feel invested in it. So that might even slow things down a bit more. Like we might have quite a slow process over the next year as we try and do our new record.
So you've got a new album planned, or is it just a?
So the plan is, so like again with everything opening up with COVID, hopefully, I think things largely will return to normal now. I might be wrong, but I think everyone's going to like rush to the stage. Like everyone's going to like rush to play and be like, "Oh, we've missed you." And I think people are going to get really bored with music quite quickly because there's going to be such an oversaturation. So while that's happening, our plan is, thinking that we're really smart here, Rick, that we are going to record. We're going to write and record, and we're going to try and take this time that everyone's using on stage to kind of remember how to be a proper band again, to play songs from beginning to end a lot and then record them, rather than sort of getting them to the studio half done and then going, we'll just record 8 guitar lines and pick the best one, and then it's. So that's the plan. We've got an album demoed. Some of it needs rearranging. Some of it is just boring, like been done before. Like we can do a lot better. Some of it I think sounds really good, and I think like I'm really pleased with how it's going. So yeah, I hope we've got something done by this time next year. But it's going to take a lot of will on our behalves, But what's really helped, Matt Evans, who is he's like our guitarist, keyboardist, does some production. He's just moved back to the north, so it's easier now. So, and I'm in the north. So yeah. That was a very long-winded answer. You can edit these.
What about gigs? Nothing booked yet.
No, we've been asked if we want to play France a couple of times. The Brexit's the issue there rather than desire. If someone offers us a good couple of shows over a weekend, the money will have to be good. Isn't it weird that no one ever talks about money in terms of actual concrete figures when we talk about this? When it is such a money-driven industry, and money can be the difference between a band carrying on and not.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not even talking about success and failure here. We're talking about are we making enough to justify doing this? And I think that it's coming down to that, because we usually get anybody who thinks it's vulgar for people to talk about the actual finances should.
No, I'd like to know because it's interesting.
But I'm going to do it. So I think we average about 300-400 euros a show, which isn't a lot if you think about the logistics of it. But then we've got records on top of that, and then. Yeah, our tours usually make a small profit. But what you have to remember is no one gets paid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe if we have a driver and we pay them for doing it, or when Andy did the first tour with us, he wasn't actually in the band, so we paid him as a dep.
Right.
Which I thought was completely fair enough. And we also he knackered his snare heads and his sticks, so we bought him some new stuff.
Wow, that's great. So
we make a little bit of money, but with all the Brexit ruling that's going to come in, that's not going to happen now, because you need to have the carnets, you need to have various things. Van rental is even more expensive because of the new insurance for going to Europe. So we need to get bigger guarantees. We need to be a bit more cutthroat, really. This is one of the things about we've never had a booking agent. It's always been DIY, completely DIY. Our records are DIY, our booking is DIY. But the problem with not having a booking agent, it means you do everything on handshake, you do everything on a relationship. And we've got great relationships with people in all four corners of France and the middle as well. But no, it's kind of we have to say look, we can't come back to your town unless you almost double what you've paid us. And they might not be willing to do that. And in some cases, I've been a promoter, and some bands have said oh, well, we want 400 quid next time. I'd have been well, I can't afford that, and you might not draw.
Yeah.
No, we always draw. We've never played a bad gig. This is the other thing. We've never played an empty gig. The bad, boring gigs you play in Wigan all the time. We've never had one of those. Our worst show on tour was in Germany.
So what about the UK shows you've played? They've all been pretty.
Yeah, they've been pretty. They've got better over time, but not. I wouldn't call them good. For instance, after our third show in Preston, I just said, "Fuck this place. We're not playing Preston again. This is sad." Every time we played there, it was sad. But then we were doing a tour, and we really needed to practice. We needed some on-stage practice as well, and the only place we could get a show was Preston. And I was oh, bloody hell, here we go again. And it was quite good, actually. In fact, it was a really good show. We had a really good night, and one of our best UK shows, actually. So they're off the list now. But our UK shows are usually start at dismal, and they never really peak past decent. Whereas our worst shows in France, our worst ones are fine.
Yeah, still not.
And our best ones are life changing, the stuff, the reason you play music. They're that you come out of it thinking yes, it's all the effort was justified.
Yeah, that's a good feeling. So breaking even, would you say that's? I know a lot of kind of DIY musicians say if you break even, that's a successful tour. Is that the barometer for you as well? Yeah,
I think so. As long as we can keep doing that. we're all too old to think about the fame, aren't we? Like we're all too old to think it. And the industry's changed so much. Like you're not going to make money selling albums. Like that's just a pipe dream. So yeah, it is. I mean, for instance, like after the last tour, we bought the band a synth.
Ooh.
That was that was the victory there. Like we bought a band a Korg Minilog, and it's like in Matt's house, and like no one ever sees it.
Oh wow!
But like and you'll probably hear a lot of that on the next record because like it was our prize for doing a tour.
You got to use it. It's the it's in the pot that you used. So 2 questions that I sent you before. If you've managed to think them over.
I've written some stuff down. Yeah.
Wicked. 3 shows that blew your mind.
Okay, so the first one is a band that I don't think anyone will have heard of, and I'd never heard of them before I went out that night. So I'll do the story. Have you ever heard of a band called Clorox Girls?
No, I haven't.
It's not them. Clorox Girls are like a punk band from, I want to say Cleveland, and they're just one of those bands who used to come to Europe every year and do a big old tour, and they'd play to their punk audiences and go home, and they'd sometimes bring a support act with them. On this occasion, it was a group called The Feelers, and I'd never heard of them. I've never heard a record by them. I've never heard a single by them. Literally never heard them apart from this night. And all of the ingredients for the show were perfect to be shit. It was like a Tuesday night in Bolton. It was nice out. I think it might have been during like a football tournament or something. So it was like, someone was like, come to this show. And I was like, I don't really want to. I can't really be bothered. Yeah. And then I went and like they played for 20 minutes. And for 20 minutes, it was just like fury. Just absolutely perfect. Like, and it was around the time when like garage rock was kind of having a bit of a revival. And they were effectively just a garage rock band. But it just reminded me of all the things that I really love. Like, you can just be surprised by something you've never heard of, by some guys who look like when they go home, they'll just be working in an office. They'll just be, teaching. They'll be at school, whatever. And it was just like, this is so great. And like, there were 30 people there, tops, because it was the Dog and Partridge, and you've been in that front bit of the Dog where it's really tiny. Yeah. And like, there's like crowd surfing at like 7:30 on a Tuesday night in Bolton. I was like, yeah, this is it. This is what it's about. For me, this is what it's about. So the Feelers, and it was so perfect that I've just never really bothered to listen to them since. Like, it was just, and I don't need to know, I don't need any more than this. Thank you. Another one. So in 2003, I went with your brother to watch Q and Not You at the Star and Garter.
I was also there.
Okay, you were there.
So we went together. Right.
I never really listened to them. And it's not that show I'm talking about. But I got really into them after that show. I thought they were really fantastic. And they did a tour for their next album, and they played in Berlin. So I went to that tour, and they were pretty average, to be honest. Like, I think they were on the point of breaking up, and they were not having fun with each other or whatever.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But the band that came on before them was the Canadian band Fly Pan Am. Have you ever listened to Fly Pan Am?
I've heard of them, yeah. Yeah,
they're like they tend to get called a side project of Godspeed You Black Emperor, which actually is not true. It's just one guy is in both bands. And they were incredible. And then they split up after that show. It was their last show. They've reformed like in the last 2 years. Yeah. But it was just like, I can't really explain it. It was just like, it just sounded like a dream, like a really vivid, lucid dream with like incredible like bass, like the best bassist I've ever seen live. Just so much fun, so much energy. And yet you can't really put your finger on what's happening at any point, like, because there's just like clouds of noise coming at you. Yeah. And again, it was just, I think that the key with all of my show series, like surprise, like you didn't expect this to happen. I'm there to watch Q and Not You. And the opening band was 31 Knots. So have you listened to 31 Knots?
No.
31 Knots are very similar to Q and Not You. In fact, they remind me of the Beat Poet a bit, like kind of like a trio with like a lot of generic dynamic kind of variants, like intelligent, kind of a bit angular. They were really good, and I was like, well, Fly Pan Am, who gives a shit? And they were so incredible. like life affirming, like really great stuff. The last one is Peter Brotzmann, who's the German saxophonist. I saw him in 2014 in Turkey. I was briefly living in Turkey, and there is a little bit of a music scene in Turkey. Because, like, a lot of the bands there really sound quite blues rocky. A lot of bands sound like the Subways for some reason.
That's random, that, isn't it?
But there's a venue I think it's called Arka Oda, and it's near what tends to be thought of as the centre of Istanbul. And like Peter Brotzmann his band played for about 3 hours, but like different members of the band would just wander on and solo and then leave for a bit, and it just made me think about how music doesn't have to be this sort of you start at this time and you finish at this time and you play all your hits. Like it was a bit more free and but the emotional peaks were really resonant. He's an amazing player. He's had like a 40-50 year career. His son is a great saxophonist as well. And he was very old. He was in his 70s, but like to see this big German guy just like eyes popping when he's like blowing his sax. Yeah, it really did. What it really did was, in fact, I'm going to rewind a bit more. Okay. In 2007, 2008, 2009, I was kind of involved peripherally in like the Levenshulme music scene, where there was a lot of space rock, free jazz stuff. And I grew to really hate that music. I really kind of find it indulgent and people just wanking and people had no idea what they were doing and people just trying to make funny sounds, almost because they thought rock was so boring that they had to just do something against it. Yeah. And what this did is it completely repaired my relationship with free jazz. It made me realize that free jazz was like a beautiful form of expression when you do it right. Or when you do it with soul, exactly. When you do it without any irony, when you do it for the love of it. And I just thought it was a really incredible show. Yeah, so Feelers, Fly Panam, Peter Brotzmann. Shout out to James Chance, but I put that show on. That was at Saki in Manchester, and that was just beautiful.
Oh yeah, Saki. Yeah, played a show there, Samuel Sharp, and also saw Charlottefield. I think it was the last time I saw Charlottefield live. It was at Cafe Saki in Manchester.
It was a good little venue, that.
Yeah. Just quickly, you mentioned about seeing a support band almost being better than the headliner.
They were better in this case.
The X supporting Melt Banana at Islington Mill. Like, I'd never heard of the X before. You know what the X from Holland?
I know the X.
Yeah. And they just blew me away, man. I was just like, they're better than Melt Banana. They're just incredible.
What era of the X are we talking? Because they've like changed singers and.
It was 2011.
Was it GW Sock?
11, I think. Yeah. Sock was in it. Yeah. 2011, I think it was. Or was it 11? Yeah, 11, I think.
Yeah, that was for me. That was probably the best era. Because Andy Moore, who's one of the guitarists, his old band, Dogface Termins, I really love them. I don't know if you ever listened to them. It's not a good name for a band, but they were an incredible band, and I'd highly recommend them to you. Their record, Hum of Life, really good. They were kind of. I think he ended up in the Netherlands because, they're Scottish, but they were all part of the same squat scene that the X were in, and he ended up moving to Amsterdam and he joined the X eventually.
Yeah. So
I really like him as a guitarist because
he's a he uses a baritone.
He uses a bari for Dogface Tones. He just played a telly, but for each he doesn't really use effects. He's just kind of like all technique and all. And I'm a really big fan of that.
His baritone sound in the X, it just sounds incredible. It's just so meaty and so driving and just pulsating.
Yeah, usually at soundcheck I sing like GW Sock. I sing in a Dutch accent to amuse myself.
So he's also been working with Don McLean, Action Beat.
He has, yeah.
Yeah, they've been doing a lot of stuff together. So
isn't it amazing that Don keeps Action Beat going, considering he lives in America? How hard working is he?
It's similar to you. He has a kind of couple of core members, and then he just kind of asks around and is like, who fancies a tour in the States or whatever, and it's just kind of who's available kind of thing. So yeah, similar setup. Last one, three records that changed your life.
Okay, I've written a few things down, so I'm just gonna. These are like little shout outs, really. Then I'll do the actual three. So, like, just Nirvana. Like, I was the right age for Nirvana. I was the right age for Oasis. Radiohead kind of changed me in a lot of ways. Not always for the better, I would say, but they did. Okay. Erasure, my enjoyment of melody, I think, comes from being a kid at the time of like synth pop. Like, I really love that. And I would say like the early Godspeed records were like super important to me, and like they really made me want to be part of music.
Yeah.
But the ones that have changed blew my mind, or like they keep blowing my mind, I've got three here. So the first one's quite recent, and it's the recent and only record by Purple Mountains. Are you familiar with this, Rick?
I'm not. I've not heard of them. No.
So I presume you know Silver Jews.
No.
Okay, Silver Jews were 90s indie rock bands. Steve out of Pavement was in the group.
Okay, well. Yeah, Pavement, yeah.
And then in 2007, David, the singer, it was his band. He said, "I'm not doing this anymore. I quit music." And then he came back in 2019, released this record, Purple Mountains by Purple Mountains, and then he committed suicide.
Oh no. Oh, God.
So the whole, but it's really interesting. So the record is just lyrically, it's like he was a poet, like an actual poet, like incredibly detailed with his word choice. Yeah. He got the band Woods to kind of help him with the music, and it's like, I think his concept for it was doing a country album, but the lyrical content is the opposite of country. So it's like self-deprecation. It's almost like rootless. Like, because a lot of country music is about like living in the South and, this is my identity. This is like, well, who am I? Like, who have I become? And like, if you read some of the interviews that he kind of did before he died, he would talk about like staging a comeback in order for it to go wrong, in a way. Okay. Like, it's almost like, I'm not going to say he knew he was going to do it because that would be crass, but like, it's certainly something he talked about a lot. But the record just like really changed my mind about, because like I've been listening to a lot of like very like technologically affected music, and it's just such a simple, affecting record with brilliant lyrics and very and like the music is about the relationship between harmony and melody rather than fun production techniques or this pedal doing this noise or whatever. It just made me realize, oh yeah, you can still do that, and it can still work if you put attention and love and craft into it. Yeah. So that really kind of blew my mind, in that it sort of opened me up to it. It made me reappreciate traditional or older forms of music a little bit more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, more like conventional harmony and kind of song structure and.
Yeah, and like it has sort of like pushed me back towards like 60s records a bit. And like, I mean, this is a whole conversation we could have for hours. Like, I just think records sound kind of bad now. I don't really like modern recording. I think the 60s and the 70s, I think studios were a lot better. I'm just a fan of tape as a thing. I think tape seems to do something to sound that I'm not intelligent enough to say. So Purple Mountains. Second one, I'm going to go for Egibam Yasi by Can. Which,
okay, yeah. Can.
That was given to me, or someone bought it for me in like 2001, 2002, and I've listened to it probably every 6 months since. And it just changes. Like, that record is just like so deceptively complex, and yet so simple. It's so much fun. It's like a fun record. Like, the musicianship is, I mean, I suppose that's a really boring thing to talk about. What I find really interesting about Can is, and I think it's the most underrated thing about being in a band, is that they know how to play as a band. Like, they are an ensemble, a true ensemble. Like,
yeah.
When I go on forums and people are talking about who's the best guitarist ever or the best drummer ever, like, I don't care. Like, if you can't play together, who gives a shit? Like, who gives a shit? Like, it's not important. Like, I didn't pay my money to hear, someone do a drum solo. I know some people do that, and that's all.
Yeah, I find it's very self-indulgent, that kind of mindset. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, and like, don't get me wrong, like I'm no appreciative of musicianship. So like a group like Magma, who are all like incredible musicians, like brilliant vocalist, brilliant drummer, brilliant bass player, they're doing that together, and they're exploring something new together with their incredibly advanced skills. Like, you know, whereas like I think some like a band like Flipper, like, you know, rudimentary players, but like they would push each other. They would challenge. They would really investigate the space. They would really do things like, I don't know, like to kind of like try and generate an atmosphere that had never been thought of before. Like, I don't think Dream Theater do that. You know, like they are Virtuoso's first, band second. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be negative here, but like it's just a bugbear that I have. So Can, like pretty much any Can record pre Damo leaving. Although I like the ones before Damo joined as well. I think they were really good. But like Egg Bamiasi seems to be like the one that's from beginning to end kind of perfect, really.
Yeah.
And then the last one, I've kind of like, I was on a forum recently and someone was like, name your favorite records of all time. And I found myself like surprised, but I wrote this one as my favorite. And I didn't really know that it had had this much of an effect on me, especially because I've known about this record for 20 years, but I've only really listened to it in the last 7 or 8, which is the self-titled record by Le Bradford. Are you familiar with Le Bradford?
No, I was hoping I'd know it, but no, I don't know it.
So Le Bradford were a trio from Richmond. They began as a duo. They get called ambient. They're not ambient. I mean, I have a whole theory about ambient that I won't. But I don't think ambient exists. There's no such genre as ambient. Ambient is like, if you think of a circle, and then all of these other genres like classical, rock, jazz, it's where they all meet in terms of like a sort of a quietness or a sort of approach, a sparseness. Okay. And a lot of modern ambient is rubbish because it's just done on computers and anyone can do it. Anyone can make a note drone for an hour on a computer. It's absolutely zero skill whatsoever. What they were was a really slow, atmospheric pop rock band, and they just created these like really perfect atmospheres. Like, and they just do something really quite sincere to me. Like, I find myself having this like unjaded, unironic, emotional reaction to it, and that's for me, that's become the most important thing. Like, am I responding to this record sincerely? Because like I think the last sort of 15 years, like there's been like a surfeit of irony or joking or meta humor, and like I've certainly indulged in my own fair share of that. Yeah. But it's not interesting. It's not interesting at all, and it doesn't actually get you anywhere to just comment on music or to comment on the thing that you're doing. And I would like to see a kind of a return to like earnestly trying to do something different. I don't know, without any conception that you might make money from it. I don't know. But yeah, anyone who's listening, like Le Bradford's middle 4 albums, they did 6. The first and last, whatever. The middle 4, Stable Reference, self-titles, Mi Media Naranja, and He Looks So. Perfect, like perfect records. And like Mark Nelson, who was the main one, he still makes music as Pan-American. He's still pretty good.
I will be getting tucking into that, as soon as this is over. So last bit is, I've got a couple of questions from someone that you know very well. My brother, Ben.
Oh, nice. Hi, Ben.
He said, what's the best football chant he's ever made up? That's the first one.
That I've ever made up?
Yeah.
I made one up the other day, actually. Who was it? It was... it was. Well, again, it was a slightly deconstructed one. It was. What's that chant? It's like. It was Werner, Timo Werner gets the ball. On the balance of probabilities, he won't score. Timo Werner. Or something like that. So I was quite pleased with that one, actually, considering I've not been to a football game for a while. I don't really even know who Timo Werner is, to be honest. I was just kind of going along with, because I was watching the Champions League final and he missed a fairly easy shot, and I thought I'll have a go at Timo Werner. I presume he's actually a very good player, but
yeah.
So that was a recent one. What's the best one? The best one I ever made up was actually at an ice hockey game. I was watching the Peterborough Phantoms against Manchester Phoenix. And all my friends were supporting Phoenix. And I just thought it'd be funny for some reason to support Peterborough because they had no fans in. Like, it's an ice hockey game. You don't really get away culture. Maybe there were a few in, I don't know. And I started chanting just after the Phantoms scored to make it 3-1 to, like, Phoenix were caning them. And I just started chanting, "Who put the ball in the Phoenix net? Who put the ball in the Phoenix net? Who put the ball in the Phoenix net?" And just as I was about to finish, some guy in front of me was like, "It's a puck, you cunt! It's a puck!"
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I stole that chant really from, I think that's it's a kind of a classic one, but my mate used to sing that for Kevin Campbell when he played for Everton.
Great, man.
Yeah.
Why did he give up wrestling?
Why did I give up wrestling?
I didn't even know he did wrestling, mate. So it's news to me.
I wasn't good at it. I mean, I did like it. I really did like it. Like, there were a few good reasons. I mean, I used to enjoy it, and it was like a really good way of like getting together with my mates. Like, we used to have like a backyard fed. We used to like film it and like write storylines and like wrestle each other on like fields and whatever. But then one day I found there was like about 10 of us, 12 of us who used to do this on the regs. Like, this is what I was, when I was at that age, it was like music or wrestling. Music or wrestling, music or wrestling. Like, I'd given up football, I'd given up cricket. And because like, you know, the thrill of just hanging out with your mates, and it's just great when you're that age. And I wrote to this company that were in Wigan, and I was like, "Why don't you train us?" And they were like, "Okay." And like, sort of daring us to go down. So we went down, and like, nearly all of us wrestled on a show, on an actual paid show in front of people, but I was lousy. I was just like really uncoordinated. And like, when you take a bump, which is when your back hits the ring, it hurts because it's just a stretched bit of canvas over plywood. It's not soft.
Yeah.
It's not the worst feeling in the world, but it's not nice.
Yeah.
And then in a match, I got clotheslines like around the chin and my bit down on my tongue really badly.
Oh, fuck. Yeah.
And like, I just realised at that point, I personally wasn't cut out for it. And what I really wanted to do was to get involved in the creative side, like writing the stories, helping people come up with their characters, designing the aesthetic of it, like the kind of the entrance music and the tone of it, because like wrestling differs from culture to culture and company to company.
Yeah,
I wanted to be involved with that, and it's really hard to do that if you're not involved in the industry. So I kind of got out, but some of my friends were pretty good at it. Like, my friend Damon is a professional wrestler now because of that experience. Like, he's made money for 20 years doing it, which is not easy. Some of them should have done more, and maybe like they thought it was sad, or they got real jobs or whatever and they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I just loved wrestling, and like, I don't love it anymore because it's gone bad. But it used to be really fun, and like I watched it until about 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I always had a sincere love of it, but the fact is, like, I was not that good at it, and I was, even though like I'm probably a bit overweight now, like I was not that. You need to be big, I think. If you're not physically gifted, you need to be big, and I was neither.
Yeah, yeah. Would you ever use what you learned in, say, a maybe, let's say, a hypothetical situation, you get into a confrontation on the street? Would you revert to some of your old wrestling moves to just a random question just popped up?
No, because this is the thing. I was so inept. Like, my character didn't have moves. Like, my character was like a sneak. Like, I would be the person who would like get beaten up for ages and then pull your hair and then roll you up and get a cheeky win. Like, I didn't do moves. I mean, look, in all seriousness, if you get in a confrontation on the street, your best bet is 1, run.
Yeah.
And then number 2, don't fight fair. Don't like if someone's confronting you on the street, why would you try and engage them in a real fight?
Yeah.
Like with rules. It's not MMA. Just get out of there or do some very quick damage and then get out of there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I don't know, like be Jesus and just get beaten up and accept it.
Good advice.
I haven't had a fight with a real person in about 20 years, and long may that continue.
Yeah, definitely. So that's it. Thanks, Dan, for coming on. Really appreciate it. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. It was great to catch up with Dan and reminisce about the old Wigan music scene. I also found his insight into gigs and the concept of live shows very interesting. Something I always remember is the chaotic energy of Dan and his performances with Total Victory. So I'm really looking forward to seeing them again live soon when things are back to normal. If you're watching on YouTube, please could you like and subscribe to my channel to help the podcast grow. If you're listening on Apple iTunes, please could you leave a review under the ratings and review section. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter by searching The Scene Was Dead Anyway. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching. I'm your host, Rick Walland, and you were listening to The Scene Was Dead Anyway.